All righty, fellas. We are back. Week 5 is almost in the books. We got one more game, of course, with Kansas City Chiefs and the New Orleans Saints tonight. But a lot of fantasy production this week. I don't know about you, but a lot of my matchups were, I mean, you and I in the Flocked Up League, for example, you beat me like 200 to 192. Like that was the fantasy scoring environment this week where there was just constant production. I mean, you got Jamar Chase going nuclear. I saw Ron actually tweeted this out earlier. We had 12 receivers and 3 tight ends go over 20 PPR points. Whereas, in prior weeks, it had been, the running back show. All the running backs were putting up the good weeks. Wide receivers and tight ends not really having the greatest weeks, but we saw a little bit of a resurgence of the passing game this week.
Yeah, it's funny you did mention the Flocked Up matchup because, I mean, that's how it went, dude. I felt like the 2 high-scoring teams are always in the same matchup in like every league I'm in. We'll get into some of the Flock League implications in a second, but yeah, you put up 192.66 in a loss because my team just decided to put up 211 points. I mean, there's really nothing you can do when that happens.
No, I would have literally beat anybody else if you look at the matchup.
Does that make me 4-0 against you this week or this year?
I can't beat Danny for the love of God. Like even in Devi Disciples, Devi Disciples, you didn't even start a quarterback. You had Anthony Richardson in your lineup. You had
league.
Drake London, Darnell Mooney, and Garrett Wilson combined for like 120 points on your team. I was like, what the hell is going on with this week? But I would say thankfully dodged some major injury bullets so far. We had a couple minor injuries or a couple injuries that'll keep a couple players out. The biggest one I would say is probably with Nico Collins. He tweaked his hamstring a couple of weeks ago, actually. Went under the radar. So the Friday before week 4, Nico Collins tweaked his hamstring, popped up on the injury report, ended up playing, had an awesome game in week 4. Nobody really seemed to care, but then it looks like he re-aggravated it in this game, probably on that long touchdown, I think is the play that he ended 100%. Up re-aggravating it on, and it is likely that he's going to miss probably 1 to 3 weeks, according to Dr. Morris and, a bunch of other doctors that have kind of cited throughout our channel's history here. Every doctor seems to be in lockstep that he's probably going to be out 1 to 3 weeks.
So adding context to that injury, because I actually had that game on as my main game. So basically the way I set up when I'm watching football Sundays is I'll put my highest profile game of each slate. Obviously, of course, if the Cowboys are playing, they're just going to be the game on TV. But if it's 1 p.m., 4 p.m., obviously the Cowboys played on Sunday night. I had the Texans-Bills game going on, and I watched that play happen. And I'm like screaming. I'm like, oh my God, let's go. And I noticed like at the 20-yard line in, like he started like slowing down a little bit and started like touching it a little bit in started touching his hamstring a little bit in the end zone. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? See, he automatically goes to the blue medical tent. I'm like, oh, fuck. Right away, as soon as you see that on a long touchdown, you're like, yeah, no, hammy probably blue.
Yeah, it's as a Buccaneers fan, I've seen plenty Mike Evans hamstring pulls on long touchdowns. I think I've seen that at least 5 times in my time being a Buccaneers fan. I noticed this is one of our takeaways, so I won't spoil the header though. One of the top, like all the top receivers are all like the alpha size dudes, like Jamar Chase, Drake London, T. Higgins. Mike Evans had a big week. DJ Moore had a big week. Brian Thomas Jr. had a big week. Brandon Ayuk had a big week. It was all like return of the alpha X style wide receiver in week 5, which I thought was great. We did have a couple other injuries to talk about here. We have Aaron Jones, left Sunday morning's game in London with a hip pointer, hip flexor, hamstring injury. We're not exactly sure what the injury is. They are on bye in week 6, so there's a chance that he doesn't miss any time as a result of this. But a lot of people, if this is like a hip flexor injury, I mean, Aaron Jones is 30 years old, so it's possible that this takes him, 2 to 3 weeks to recover from, which is the timeline I've seen floated around by Edwin over at Fantasy Points. If that happens, then Ty Chandler is obviously going to be a guy that we talk about in the waiver portion, even though they're on bye this week.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this was always the problem with Aaron Jones, the fantasy asset, is that even though we can't predict injuries on a year-to-year basis, looking at a 29-year-old running back with the touches he has under his belt, changing teams this offseason, history of kind of these minor little like hamstring issues, lower body issues, like people were saying like, oh, like why didn't Aaron Jones go in like the 3rd or 4th round in all of our leagues, especially with how the Vikings are looking? Like, this is why he's a fine value when you get him in the 7th round when he's on the field, but there's always these little minor concerns we have to deal with.
Yeah, September Aaron Jones always feels like he should always have been going higher. And then we get into, any kind of nagging injury. I mean, it completely derailed his season last year, and it definitely could derail his season yet again because he turns 30 in like 2 months. Like, he is an old running back. And these types of injuries take longer to recover from. Like, I think the perfect example of this is you look at Joe Mixon, who had like a medial ankle sprain. He's been out like 3 games, suffering some setbacks by the sounds of it as well. That same type of injury on a younger running back probably only keeps them out 1 to 2 games. Like, I'm pretty sure Devon Achane played through his medial ankle sprain in week 3. So with younger running backs versus older running backs, you kind of have to worry about once they start to get banged up. And Kamara tonight is also one of these guys that awesome through September, and he's starting to get banged up a little bit too. And that has to worry you. Speaking of Devon Achane, he suffered a concussion. He was immediately ruled out. He is on bye in week 6 as well. Probably not going to miss any time given the normal concussion timelines.
I don't want to hear injury prone this and that. Like, I think Edwin actually quote tweeted this as well. Like, I don't think any human understands what it's like to have your head whipped from one direction to another direction in that type of instance in a football game setting. Like, you know how fast those fucking human beings are fucking moving?
How strong they are too. Like, dude, a guy dragging you to the ground at full
and your head just fucking
as hard as they can is going to give you concussions. Like, there's a reason that we have a whole concussion, talk around football players. It's like these guys are moving at car accident speed. Especially a guy like Achane as fast as he is.
Yeah, for sure. Just unfortunate, but I mean, concussions are not fun to deal with. I can tell you guys that firsthand.
Yeah, and I like I said, I think because he's on bye in week 6, there's a chance he doesn't miss any game time. With it, of course, make sure Raheem Mostert and maybe Jalen Wright are rostered. He had actually pretty decent game, both of them. Zach Moss looked like suffered a high ankle sprain. Now, he did return in the game, but similar to what we saw with Joe Mixon, sometimes the adrenaline's pumping during these games. You're able to come back in. It was a close game, a very high scoring game, went to overtime. Got to get that win for a 1-3 football team, now 1-4 football team. I think there's a chance that the swelling kind of like Zach Moss is dealing with swelling this week, and there's a chance that he's going to be out the next 1 to 2 games, and that obviously is going to make Chase Brown a much bigger focal point of that offense. And finally, I mean, as Chase Brown bag holders, hopefully we're able to get some redemption here.
I got to ask you, I mean, let's play the hypothetical game. Zach Moss ruled out for week 6. Where is Chase Brown in the running back rankings?
I think they play the Giants, so pretty high, football? I would say. He's got to be a top 12
over under 12. I was going to say over under 12.5. Like that feels like the sweet spot for him, I think.
Yeah, I mean, with guys on bye too next week, we got, I think, 4 teams on bye as well. You're probably looking at a top 12 play next week if Chase Brown is the starter, and I think he will be, to be honest, because again, everybody goes, "Oh, Zach Moss, he was fine. He returned to the game." Ankle sprains specifically swell up during the week, and they are usually the week later that you're dealing with them, and pretty much anything lower body related. I mean, we saw it with Kenneth Walker. He comes out after the game. He says he's fine in week 1. Then he misses 2 games as a result of it. We saw with Joe Mixon, comes back into the game, ends up missing 2 to 3 games as a result of it. That's just usually what happens with these lower body injuries. In the moment, adrenaline's pumping. You're able to play through it. As the week goes along, you wake up, you feel not so great, and you can't practice for a whole week or whatever. I think that there's a chance that Zach Moss misses a game here, potentially 2 games or 3 games, if it is a full status high ankle sprain. We also saw Josh Allen suffer a concussion, or maybe suffer a concussion, but not be treated for a concussion. I saw Dr. Morse ranting pretty hard on the concussion protocol, maybe not being followed on Josh Allen because he's Josh Allen. That didn't really look like a good situation. And I think Josh Allen got his bell rung, and maybe it was underreported.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense considering that Josh Allen went 9 for 30 in the game. That he probably had, he's probably seeing 2 receivers at once.
Yeah, not a great situation. Hopefully that gets rectified. We've seen that one too many times where a star player gets to go back in because they're a star player. If Matt Collins suffers that injury, is he coming back into the game? No. Probably not. You know what I mean? Like it shouldn't matter what the game situation is, how good your team is, how bad your team is, who the player is. If you have a concussion, you have a concussion. Like, you shouldn't be going back into the game. A couple minor injuries, just to recap. Drake London, rib injury, did return in Thursday Night Football's game. Aaron Rodgers looked banged up all day. Low ankle.
Was that when he twisted and made that
Yeah, so it looked like he sprained his knee potentially on that play. Then after the game, he said he had a low ankle sprain. So it looks like he's playing through some stuff. They're going to have, obviously an important game coming up against the Bills on Monday night this week. So that'll be interesting to follow his practice reports. Xavier Legette left the game with a shoulder issue against the Bears, didn't return. I don't think he's going to be out significant time. According to most of the docs I've seen, everybody thinks he's going to be fine in week 6. And then Ramondre also dealt with a knee issue. Which went underreported. Nobody really knows what happened, but definitely keep that in mind for this week on the waiver wire, because Antonio Gibson actually outsnapped him, and we'll talk about that in a second. And there's a chance that maybe he's going to be the starter this week, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, for sure. But overall, that is the injury roundup. You did also mention Drake London's rib injury. Again, doesn't seem like an issue like you mentioned. He had a fantastic game. I'm sure you want to forget that Thursday night game, but yeah, let's just say if you guys didn't have a rooting
it was a great game. I mean, I don't mind
yeah.
losing games like that. It was a fun game to watch.
Oh, for
it's
sure.
a little gut-wrenching when you were winning the whole game and you could have put the game away if Bucky Irving doesn't fumble or we're a little bit more aggressive on, third down or first down or whatever. I think that Mayfield was playing so well in that game that they absolutely could have let him just, go get the first downs and run out the clock. But, shit happens. The Falcons played a great game and we kind of choked it at the end. Usually the Falcons are used to choking.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, Jared is saying NFLPA is investigating Josh Allen.
Yeah, that seemed like a little bit of a suspect concussion protocol that he passed it. I mean, Dr. Moore said there's absolutely no way he could have passed the protocol that quickly. Like just in general, like even if there is a suspected concussion, he clears it. There's no way he could have cleared it that fast.
Yeah. Also shout out to everybody reiterating what I was saying to Corey going into the stream is that maybe the Rico for Brooks deal doesn't look like the complete fleece it did at the time.
I've never seen somebody victory lap the player that they traded away in a trade more times than Danny has.
I have so much Rico Dowdle that I'm actually just happy about it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I chose to invest in Ezekiel Elliott a lot in best ball leagues, but I did get quite a bit of Dowdle as well. Let's get into some of the biggest takeaways. And I kind of mentioned it at the top of this, but there was a lot more scoring this week than we've seen in prior weeks. And the two highest scoring games, at least in the 1 p.m. window, had a lot of fantasy takeaways, in my opinion. We kind of already teased Bengals, Ravens. I mean, all three of the Bengals trio got there. T. Higgins has 2 touchdowns. Jamar Chase, monster game, #1 receiver on the entire week so far. And then also Joe Burrow threw 5 touchdowns, and somehow they lost the game. And then, like I said, also too, Chase Brown could take over this backfield if Zach Moss is out for the next couple of games. But I mean, the Bengals offense looked like it was firing on all cylinders. I'm glad we talked about Jamar Chase a couple of weeks ago as a buy low candidate, because precisely what has occurred and transpired the last couple of weeks is, once you bought Jamar Chase, he gave you a 30-point week 2 weeks in a row, and now like a 45-point week or something like that. Like he has been outstanding so far this year.
Yeah, exactly, dude. I mean, Jamar Chase in the last 2 weeks is what? Or 3 weeks, actually, when you
I think he's been over 30 the last 3 games. I have to double check this really quick.
So 29.8, 17.5, 41.3, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 19, wide receiver 1 on those weeks respectively. Also, a big shout out. I may as well just show it now because it just came to my mind. But I actually do have Jamar Chase on my big dog team, and the team, I feel like I make an update on it every week, but I just get excited every time I look at it. And again, knock on wood, because it would be really nice being able to take down the $200,000. But I mean, I'll just pop that on the screen real quick. We are in a good spot right now. How do I share my screen?
While you're doing that really quick, I just want to shout out a fun fact. There's 4 wide receivers who went to Louisiana State University in the top 12 of fantasy scoring right now. Malik Neighbors and Jamar Chase are wide receiver 1 and 2 on the season. Justin Jefferson, wide receiver 6, and Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver 12.
My guy.
Yeah, he's cooking. I will admittedly eat some crow on Brian Thomas Jr. Not like I had him low. I mean, he was my wide receiver 6 in class, but most people thought he was wide receiver 4 pretty comfortably over Worthy, over McConkey, over whoever else you might have had. I thought it might take him a little bit of time to develop, and they're using him pretty effectively. Like they're letting him do exactly what he does well, which is use his speed, use his size, stretch the field, that type of thing. He's honestly, he looks like a star. And I think you can make the argument he's a top 15, top 12, even dynasty wide receiver. Like how high is he going to rank in the dynasty rankings after our next update here? Like he's like, who would you rather have right now? Rome Odunze or Brian Thomas Jr.?
I think both him and Rome are going to be going up over like Olave and stuff.
You'd rather have those guys than Olave?
I would.
Yeah, I don't think that's an outrageous argument. I mean, maybe you put Drake London ahead of those guys still, given what he did this past week. I mean, it's definitely
they're all in like the 8 to 12 range, I would say.
I think we got a little bit more depth as far as the mid wide receiver 2s are concerned. Because remember we talked about during the offseason that like those mid wide receiver 2s didn't seem that great. And now it seems like because of this influx injection of young wide receivers, we're getting a better group in that mid wide receiver 2 range where, in the 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds of startups, you're probably just hammering out those types of players.
For sure. Quick look at the team, and then we'll go back to the recap. CJ Stroud, Geno Smith at quarterback, James Cook, Joe Mixon, Trey Benson, Zach Charbonnet, J.K. Dobbins, Marshawn Lloyd, Justice Hill at running back, Chase Collins, Metcalf, Addison, Lockett, McMillan, and QJ at wide receiver, Kelsey, and then Sinnott for the late season upside at tight end. So we are currently in second place.
Yeah, it looks like a good team. My big dog team is in sixth still, but it's like a log jam between like second to fifth. So, or second to sixth. So it looks like I just need some big weeks. I had a lot of guys on bye this week. Like I had Barkley and a bunch of other dudes. So I lost a little bit of ground from that perspective, but I should be in a better spot going forward. So yeah, that Bengals Ravens game, obviously very high scoring. On the Ravens side of things, Zay Flowers had a nice bounce back game, which I kind of talked about as a honorable mention buy low on the wide receiver video this week. And Isaiah Likely now looks to be solidified as the tight end.
Mark Andrews is droppable.
He's droppable. Look, so if you look at this usage here, and this is courtesy of Fantasy Life again, big shout out to them. 72% of the routes this week didn't really have a whole lot of targets, and Charlie Kohler for some reason caught a big play and also a touchdown. But Mark Andrews is well below the route participation now in 3 straight games of Isaiah Likely. And I think Likely of these two options is definitely the one that I would feel most comfortable starting on a weekly basis. I think he's like a top 12 tight end probably for the rest of season situation. And definitely a guy, I mean, he's highly rostered right now. I think he's like 62% rostered. So he's probably not the greatest waiver ad.
Remember when he was the number 1 waiver ad in week 1?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's the reason he's still highly rostered is because a lot of people dropped a lot of fab on him after the first game and probably didn't want to cut bait at that point in time. But yeah, he's definitely a guy that is on the rise, like as far as rest of season rankings are concerned. And yeah, Andrews, I mean, you can comfortably drop this guy, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Fully agree on that. I just said I agree 2 times. Wow. It's a great morning after a win when you can't even coherently speak straight, because my takeaway number 1, Cowboys win at the buzzer. And I'll talk about a couple of Flock League implications in a second, because there was drama in the Flock League on Sunday Night Football. But I mean, first of all, I got the jersey on for a reason. Did he throw a couple?
Beat the Steelers. I'm sorry. I don't know why you're wearing a jersey after that.
Dude, when you score 14 points in the fourth quarter against a top 5 defense on the road, yes, I'm wearing my fucking quarterback's jersey, because holy Christ, that is a game of adversity. You are down to edge 5 and edge 6. You are down to cornerback 5 in the lineup. Wide receiver 2 is on IR. Their whole team is fucking decimated. Lost starting left tackle in the game. Tyler Guyton went out with a knee injury. And your quarterback, despite making a couple mistakes in the mid portion of the game, I'm not going to defend the interceptions. I'm not going to defend the strip fumble. But you know what I'm fucking looking at? When they needed the 2 touchdowns most, he drove them down the field. 4th and goal from the 4-yard line. You find Jalen Tolbert, who we'll get into right now as well. The play before, the guy literally twists his fucking nuts. Testicular torsion. You guys can look it up. Very fucking painful. Twists his nuts up. And on 4th and goal, catches the game-winning touchdown at the buzzer. Just unbelievable display of guts. And this is the type of Cowboys win I'm not used to. This is the type of game where it's they've driven the ball so much, but they've, 4 fucking red zone turnovers later, and you end up losing to the Steelers 17-13. I've seen that story so many times. The fact that they had the toughness, both mentally and physically, to go down on that last drive, to make it to 4th and goal, and score that touchdown, man. That, honest to God, I'm just fucking proud, because quite frankly, that is not the team that I saw looking like they were willing to give up in week 2 against the Saints. They look like ever since they came back from the Ravens, they've dialed up their level of locked in. And I know it's such a cliche way of saying, because again, it is only a road win versus the Steelers and Justin Fields. I'm not saying we won the fucking Super Bowl, but against a top 5 defense, scoring 2 touchdowns when you had 6 points in the first 3 quarters, pretty fucking impressive to me.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a boring game that I fell asleep on the couch and went to bed, because it also on the East Coast here didn't start till almost 10 o'clock. And I had no interest in watching that game. So I can't even give you any takeaways from that game, because I literally didn't watch it. I didn't think anything was interesting in that game there. And I was not staying up till 1 a.m. to watch the Steelers and Cowboys play.
I don't blame you. I mean, dude, I'll just give you the TLDR. The Steelers were creating pressure all game. Joey Porter ended up making a good interception on the goal line. And then when the Cowboys needed to lock in, despite having a backup backup guard because Tyler Smith was playing tackle, backup guard in the game, were able to do it. I mean, I also got to talk about, because I mentioned the Flock League. Holy fucking drama. I mean, first off, my own matchup. I went into the game, I believe, down 28 to 30 points. I had Dak Prescott, Jalen Tolbert, and Brandon Aubrey. I'm going into Monday Night Football up 23. All he has left is Harrison Butker. So as long as Harrison Butker doesn't have the most points of a kicker so far this year, I should be 4-1. Again, I'm not saying I'm 4-1 right now.
This has a kicker game written all over it, though. Just all I'm saying. Like
very
this,
well
this
could.
Chiefs Saints game could be like, 17 to 15 or something, and the Chiefs just pipe 5 field goals and lose or something like that.
If Harrison Butker pops in 450 plus yarders, he deserves it. That's where I'm at with it. I'm at peace, because I mean, it would literally need to be the most outlandish kicker performance. Like, dude, when Brandon Aubrey went off in week 1, he had 21 points for the record. So like,
yeah, well, so I played against Joe this week. Green means money, and if Koo doesn't miss the 2 field goals, he would have dropped 25 points. Koo. He had one blocked, and then he missed one of them, but he had a monster game even still, despite those 2 blocks or those 2 misses. So definitely not
literally same spot as me, by the way.
Yeah, literally the same exact position. But yeah. My Flock League matchup went pretty easy. I mean, I played Green Means Money at a bad team. My team had a big bounce back performance. We finally got some production from Garrett Wilson and Brandon Ayuk. Finally got some production out of my defense and kicker yet again. My first 2 games, I was really good at streaming those. Had a good matchup there with the Seahawks getting the fumble recovery against the Giants, and Kaimi Fairbairn pikes home like 15 points worth of kicks as well, which felt pretty good. I still have Mahomes and Kelsey to go tonight, and I'm already up. I have a chance to be the highest scoring team on the entire week if Mahomes and Kelsey combine for like 35 points. So even though it's Green Means Money, he's the worst team in the league. And sometimes you need a tune-up game. The scene in The Longest Yard where Adam Sandler's like, we schedule like Appalachian State or something. We smack the living shit out of them. That's exactly what Green Means Money was to me. I was 1-3. I needed a win. So a big emphatic win would have been nice. I mean, if it would have come against a decent opponent who it's actually going to factor into the standings, but I'll take the win. I'll take the team getting some confidence. I mean, Garrett Wilson and Ayuk needed a good game to like make their seasons go a little bit better.
It was funny. So when I was gloating, I'm like, oh my God, see guys, I told you, like Joe fleeced me with Rico Dowdle. This, like, I was just like joking around in the chat. And then fucking Zach comments the meme of Chris Paul delivers crucial 3 to cut the lead to 42. And he's like, Joe in this matchup with Rico Dowdle's points.
Yeah, no, I kind of smoked him this week, but yeah, definitely classic.
One more thing.
Go ahead.
Real before that. So I mentioned Flock League takeaways. We just talked about our own takeaways. The biggest storyline of the week. Obviously, there's a big rivalry in the league. I'm not going to completely give the spoilers on the stream. You guys will watch that over on the Tuesday.
They might already know if they follow one of them on Twitter, but
specifically one of them, because he tweets out every single little thing that goes on. But yeah, let's just say somebody won on the last second Dak to Jalen Tolbert score, and then lost on the ensuing last play of the game where they were throwing it around because his player got attributed with the fumble.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't awake for it, but when I woke up to it, I was like, that is the craziest way I've seen somebody lose a fantasy matchup in a while. Like, I've lost a fantasy matchup on a kneel down before. I believe like a couple of years ago, I lost on a kneel down, and that one was pretty crazy. I've also lost on like, I remember 3 or 4 years ago, the Eagles got like one of those bullshit, like geriatric, lateral plays. They scored like a defensive touchdown, and I ended up losing my matchup on one of those as well, which was definitely brutal. But I do want to talk about Colts Jaguars too, because that is a crazy game that went on.
Real quick, you mentioned takeaways like that. Literally one of the first years I won my league championship. It was the week that the Eagles had the fucking fumble return on the kickoff for a touchdown, because Washington was laddering it around in the last play. The Eagles recovered it, returned it for a touchdown. I won a fucking fantasy football semifinal basically because of that game, because I ended up winning by like 1 total point.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's wild. I mean, I feel like for some reason, I feel like all of the crazy stories about defenses have been involving the Eagles and Commanders also.
Always.
Like, for some reason. It's always the Eagles and Commanders. But anyways.
By the way, for the record, this was the game, the end of the final score after the fumble.
Jesus, let me talk about Colts Jaguars. Okay.
Sorry.
Colts Jaguars was an interesting matchup because you have Richardson ruled out basically Sunday morning that he's not going to play. This would have been a really good get right spot for him because the Jags defense couldn't stop a nosebleed at all. But Joe Flacco comes in and he absolutely friggin' carves the Jaguars defense, getting Pittman there. He has a touchdown, 15 fantasy points. Josh Downs has like 13 targets or something like that. Alec Pierce, his usual 3 catch for 130 and a touchdown stat line. And then Adonai Mitchell also commands like a bunch of targets on the limited routes that he gets. I mean, Joe Flacco was just objectively better for this offense than what, Anthony Richardson has done. And even Trey Sermon gets there. He scores a touchdown, has like 5 or 6 receptions or whatever it was. I mean, we could talk about a bunch of takeaways on the Jaguars. We're going to in a second, but it looks like Flacco is probably not going to start anymore after this because I think Richardson will be back in week 6. But the question is, should he start? Yeah.
So for the record,
because you have to see what Richardson can do, but this team is unequivocally better with Joe Flacco.
So, by the way, shout out Joe Flacco because I actually played him in my lineup in one of my leagues. Anthony Richardson was out. I'm like, oh, fuck, I don't have a quarterback. Oh, fuck, Joe Flacco's available. I know this is a good matchup. I'm going to fire him in. Had Joe Flacco, had Trey Sermon on that team, and projected to win at a 76% rate, assuming Xavier Worthy doesn't score over 24 PPR points tonight. So shout out Joe Flacco. But yeah, I think unequivocally, if you do have Colts players, you want Joe Flacco starting. And I've actually mentioned that in the wide receiver rankings video. I said, listen, I have Pittman and Downs ranked in my 30 to 33 range. I believe they were 31 and 32 for me. But if Flacco plays, I think both are like within the top 25 area. I think I had Pittman wide receiver 22, and I had Downs wide receiver 28. I mean, if you guys were actually here on the Sunday morning live stream, how many times did I say fire up Josh Downs on that live stream when Flacco?
Yeah, well, I mean, I had Pittman inside my top 20. I'm pretty sure going into the week because I really thought that Flacco was going to sling the ball around, and he did. And I mean, Trevor Lawrence, conversely, on the other side of the ball, there was a million takeaways from the Jaguars side of things.
Talk about him as a streamer on the Friday video. Hopefully, you guys, if you were in a pinch, put Trevor Lawrence in because he carved.
Yeah, so he had a great game. Brian Thomas Jr. completely full circle alphas Christian Kirk. It's done. It's a wrap. It's over. Christian Kirk at one point was, getting the targets and getting the routes. Christian Kirk ran like 53% of the routes in this game.
He's going to get traded.
Brian Thomas Jr., he could get traded. You're right. He definitely could. Brian Thomas Jr. solidified and cemented himself at the very least as a top 20 dynasty receiver, if not a top 12 to 15 dynasty
those numbers receiver. Up. Yeah. Like I think at this point at minimum 15. And I think, like you said, it's more like 10 to 12. I honestly said coming into the week, I literally said, I think on the Sunday stream, I'm like, dude, like if Trevor Lawrence just hit with Brian Thomas a couple more times, we'd be talking about this guy as a wide receiver 1 right now. And then he also hit with Brian Thomas a couple more times.
Yeah, no, he could have hooked up with Brian Thomas, a couple more times for sure in the game. And Thomas too, like throughout the season, I feel like we've been closer to like bigger games from Brian Thomas Jr. Like I don't know if you guys were following me on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, but I had like a 12-leg parlay on the Monday night doubleheader where the Jags and Bills played each other. And the only leg that missed was a Brian Thomas touchdown. And it would have been like a $22,000 payout or whatever. I was so mad that Thomas at the end of the game, you know how the Jags like had Mac Jones in or whatever, and they tried to like score a desperation last second touchdown. I was like, dude, if you have Brian Thomas Jr. in that game, not only does he probably score because the Bills had like backups on defense in, but I also probably win $22,000 at the same time. So I was really sad about that. But Thomas, I mean, he's arrived, man. Like on my no flocking team's looking scary, bro. That team is looking scary.
Also, J Metal, appreciate you because shout out. We actually made a trade with Brian Thomas in the rookie draft, and it's actually on Tone Setter Truthers, where a Tone Setter Truthers team, let's just say, is kicking into full gear. It is hilarious because when you look at that team, I lost the first 2 games because people just dropped absolute bombs on me. I had 660 points against coming into the week.
In 4 games?
I had 660 points against in 4 games. And I was 2-2 because of it. My points against, so I had the most points scored in the league by a good amount. I have 680.92 entering the week, and I dropped 100, or I'm on pace to drop 193 again this week. And I had 660 against.
You know what's crazy is that Karma Chameleon, who's in second place right now, has 382 points against.
How do I have basically 300 more points against than him?
That's crazy. I mean, he's probably played some tanking teams or whatever. That kind of makes sense. But yeah, definitely the leagues are starting to materialize some of the contenders. I think it's fun. I don't know about if you're in this situation, but because we've been making content for, the last like 4 years or whatever, a lot of my dynasty rebuilders that I drafted rebuilds out of startups when we started the channel are starting to become scary at this point, because they're like 2 to 3 years in to the league. So yeah, it's pretty crazy that that I'm looking at some of my teams after like 2 years of rebuilding out of the startup, and I'm like, holy crap, some of these teams are good.
Yeah, my Flock Me Silly team soon, once I actually get some players on my team.
My Flock Me Silly team, I think, is going to be undefeated this week.
Probably. Oh, I'm completely tanking.
227. I dropped 227 points this week.
Dude, I didn't even have a full lineup.
Dropping 2 in my lineup.
I didn't have a full lineup, and I'm a tanking team, but like all of my tanking plays like hit. Like Tyrone Tracy did well. Kyle Pitts, who like is technically a tanking tight end right now, he did well. Like the Mario Douglas, Tracer. First of all, if you guys don't know, like this is a complete tanking lineup, and it just decided to potentially win me a game, which hopefully that doesn't actually end up happening, because I do want to lose. But anyways,
I feel bad for Arnold. Dropped 165 points. He would have beaten like every team but 3, and I dropped 227 on his head top. So that feels pretty good.
Is that your home league?
No, that was Flock Me Silly. I'm going to 5-0 now. Gotcha. Jamar Chase, DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, like everybody popped off in my lineup. So
I'm not gonna lie, I completely forgot Arnie was actually in the Flock Me Silly league. That's what's up.
No, he is for sure.
Yes, sir.
Let's move into some more takeaways here so we don't spend 600 years talking about this. There was a lot of backfields that had some changes that I think we should probably talk about. The one that we're going to talk about probably especially in the waiver section, but Tank Bigsby, you guys can see it on the screen there, actually outsnaps Travis Etienne, that was also staying in that Jaguars Colts game, and is the number 1 running back on the entire slate. We were not wrong on Tank Bigsby. We were simply early.
I wish I grabbed more of him in Best Ball Mania this year. I'm not gonna lie.
I think I grabbed like actually a half decent amount of him, because I looked at Tank Bigsby as like, okay, is he great as a player? No, coming into the year, he definitely was not great. But I looked at Tank Bigsby very similarly to, Kyron Williams, where it was like, hey, he was actually a half decent prospect, just like Kyron was. And we kind of all gave up on Kyron after his rookie season. And I was like, hey, Tank Bigsby is at the very least a very solid handcuff to Travis Etienne, and maybe even potentially more. Like, I don't know. Doug Peterson came out and said, Tank Bigsby's not going to be our starter or anything. It's still going to be Travis Etienne's job. But who knows, man? If Tank Bigsby keeps playing like this, I don't think a guy who's got his back against the wall as far as like getting fired would be well served to just give Travis Etienne the ball.
Want to hear a fun fact?
What's that?
Yesterday, the amount of points Tank Bigsby scored was more than his entire rookie season.
That's crazy.
I'm looking at it right now on Underdog, and I'm like, wait, he has 42.6 already, and he scored 22.3 last year. He had more than 22.3 yesterday. He had 24 points, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and speaking of tanking dynasty teams, my FSE Listener League team was supposed to be tanking this year, and because of Tank Bigsby and Roschon Johnson and Jayden Daniels and Jaden Reed and a bunch of guys that were just like rebuilding pieces for me, they're all just like popping off and breaking out, which is kind of an interesting development for me. But yeah, Tank Bigsby and that backfield is definitely going to be one that we're going to need to keep eyes on. Another backfield that I think is an interesting one that we're going to talk about here. I mentioned that Ramondre suffered like a weird knee injury that we might get more information on. But also he was told coming into the game that Antonio Gibson would start. And even though Ramondre Stevenson had 19.1 PPR points per game in this game, was a top 5 running back on the week, Antonio Gibson outsnapped him. He did not outcarry him, but he did run more routes. He did outsnap him. So that is going to be an interesting development in that backfield going forward. I think very clearly the biggest takeaway from that is that you should probably try and sell high on Ramondre Stevenson after the big game. But also, too, Antonio Gibson might go under the radar as far as like waiver wire stuff is concerned, because people probably thought, oh, he's going to be this like starting running back, and he didn't like get the fantasy production. So people might drop him, or people might not be that inclined to pick him up. Although if Stevenson is banged up or just whatever the case is going forward, he might actually have a pretty decent role.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, quite frankly, like Ramondre Stevenson, it's all kind of mental stuff with him. Because, I mean, the reason why it would happen coming into the slate is that he had the fumbling issues. And people are going to think, oh, maybe it motivated him, 19.1 points, RB5 on the slate. Like, no, like when you look at the issues, like you said, not only did he outsnap him, yes, while Ramondre Stevenson got more rushing attempts, Ramondre Stevenson's big allure a couple years ago when he was a big fantasy asset was that he had such a stronghold on the receiving profile of the backfield. Antonio Gibson ran more routes than him.
Yeah, no, he did. And I'm still, this is like ETN and Jayden Daniels related. This is like a side note. I'm still kind of mad at myself for trading away Drake May in a second for Jayden Daniels, even though Drake May hasn't really played yet and we don't know how that's going to materialize.
Well, if you wanted to reverse that trade, you could probably get a 1+ on top of Drake May, because like that, I mean, we might just go back into my next takeaway in a second, but yeah, like people are going to be validly so ranking Jayden Daniels as a top 5 asset in fantasy.
Yeah, no, people are going to rank him like, if you pulled the chat right now, who would you guys rather have in Dynasty Superflex startup?
Over under
Jayden
QB 3.5.
Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I think that's the line. Hurts or Daniels, like QB3, QB4.
Yeah.
Well, Stroud too, but like you would take Stroud over Hurts or Hurts over Stroud?
I would take Stroud over Hurts at this point in time.
So the question now is, would you take Daniels or Stroud?
I would take Stroud still, but I would take Daniels probably right after him.
Yeah, I mean, that was literally one of my takeaways. We may as well just go right down to it. I will finally concede on Jayden Daniels. I needed to see more of a sample. You guys would have heard me. I think it was either last week's live stream or the live stream before, when everybody was excited about Jayden Daniels. I'm like,
including me.
I said I just need to see a little bit more, because the defense he's been playing against weren't that great. Cleveland coming into the game, I'm not going to call them a fake fraud defense. What Jayden Daniels and the Commanders offense showed, specifically with how Cliff Kingsbury, I gave that guy so much shit, but how he tailored this offense around Jayden Daniels, man, like they're a scary football team. You could even make the case that they're one of the best football teams in the NFL right now. Absolutely.
They're the best team in your division.
Absolutely.
I mean, we'll see what the Eagles look like when everyone's healthy, but yeah,
that
given your injuries and Philly's injuries so far this year, they got to be the best team in that. I mean, their defense isn't good, but Jayden Daniels is just carrying the team right now.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, Cleveland is a more than fine defense, but Jayden Daniels looks like a stud. He's making plays out of structure. Terry McLaurin's been fully unlocked. Obviously, Brian Robinson in short yards situations. Like, their offense is really fucking good. And guess what? They got the Baltimore Ravens up next, and that's going to be one of the most fun games of possibly even the entire year.
Yeah, you got two of the most athletic quarterbacks in the league going after each other. It's going to be a lot of fun. I thought it was interesting, and I kind of teased this point already, that the clear alphas got back on track. I mean, how many times have we said on wide receiver trade targets videos, yeah, go buy Brandon Ayuk, go buy Garrett Wilson, go buy Drake London.
Literally on the wide receiver rankings video, I had Wilson and Ayuk lower than I usually do. And I literally said, look, I can make the case about the peripherals week in every week. Just go out there and play. And both of them went out there and played. So, like, again, it almost feels like a punishment. Like, oh, yeah, because you haven't been playing, like I had you down at 20 and 21 or whatever. But, like, I can't just continually rank you in the top 13 if you're not putting up production. Like, I could talk about peripherals each and every day, but if you're not going out there on the field and playing good football, I can't rank you up there. Well, guess what? Both played good football, and both are going to be in my top 12 to 15 of my wide receiver rankings next week, and possibly even higher depending on the bye weeks.
Yeah, no, I think you could definitely really feel good about what happened with all of those guys. I mean, Garrett Wilson has 22 targets for the Jets. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is banged up. Bills are going to be a bit of a tougher matchup for them on the schedule, but at least Wilson looked better. That was the thing that I kept saying. I mean, I said it, I made a TikTok kind of recapping our trade targets, and I talked about Ayuk and Wilson specifically in that. And I was like, these guys just need to like play better. That's literally all that needs to happen. Like, the targets are there. The offense, is still kind of figuring things out, both in San Francisco and with the Jets. They just need to play better. And Brandon Ayuk had 100 yards in the first half. Garrett Wilson has 22 targets in this game. Both of them looked like they looked last year. That was exactly what you needed to see out of Garrett Wilson and Brandon Ayuk. And I think after, let's say, week 9, we might look back on the Garrett Wilson, Brandon Ayuk kind of buy low window as like, I can't believe I didn't send offers in every single league that I'm in.
Also, I mean, we're talking about underperforming receivers that ended up playing well. I see a lot of shit being talked about Dontavian Wicks in the chat. You guys do realize Dontavian Wicks still had, 8 targets yesterday?
7 targets, and it was
7 targets,
25% as well.
25% target share?
Yeah. I mean, Wicks had some bad drops, and he's kind of actually, I think he's like second in the NFL in drops on the year right now. But
hands are an issue, but the guy is fucking good at football when it's actually in his hands. Yeah, people saying Wicks sucks, like, relax. It is one game. Were you saying Ayuk sucks last week? Because I would have burned you this week.
Yeah, no, it's something that we'll have to monitor for sure on Dontavian Wicks because he hasn't played super well. But he has flashed very, very evidently last week specifically.
Correction. He's played super well when the ball's actually made it into his hands to a tucked in position in his arms. That is the issue.
Yeah. No, if he'd be prime Jerry Rice if he had normal hand-eye coordination. Yeah. I mean, it was kind of a stinker, but like not everything is cut and dry. Wicks was an awesome play this week. 9 out of 10 times he hits, right? He didn't hit this time. I'm telling you right now, Wicks is a good, potential buy low candidate, and or maybe people are going to like rage drop him after this game too. And you might be able to just go pick him up.
Also, listen, we'll talk about Whittington in the waiver section. I like Whittington a lot, but Conscious, I see he says I'd keep Whittington rather than claim Wicks. I like Whittington a ton, but there's no way I am keeping I am not keeping potentially Jordan Love's wide receiver 2 rest of season over Jordan Whittington, who once Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua come back, is at best the wide receiver 3 on that team.
Yeah, and I based on the timelines we've heard, I think Kupp will be back probably by like week 7. So you're getting like maybe one more good week out of Jordan Whittington, and then you're probably back to him being a waiver ad that you never know how to start or who to start or when to start him. We're on the Packers, so you might as well talk about Tucker Kraft here.
Yeah, I literally have as my listed note here. Tucker Kraft may be the savior of the tight end position. It's still crazy looking back how much people were convinced, oh, Luke Musgrave is the tight end 1. Oh, I'm going to be drafting Luke Musgrave in the 13th, 14th round of my best ball drafts. That Tucker Kraft guy, he's no good. He's not even worth even being drafted in 18 rounds. Well, everybody was doing that according to best ball ADP.
I mean, part of it was because Kraft was hurt in the offseason with the pec injury, but still, I don't know how we got there, to be honest, because all the peripherals told you that Musgrave was not as good as Kraft as a rookie. Target commanding wise, I mean, Musgrave, I think, had like a better yards per route run or something like that, but I don't know. It's almost as if, like, as prospects, one of them was really athletic and productive, and one of them was just really athletic, and we should have taken the one that was really athletic and productive, which was Tucker Kraft.
Yeah, I mean, like, we were always on that page. If there's a couple things you can contribute. There's a couple things you can attribute to FSC. One of them absolutely has to be that we were all in on Tucker Kraft over Musgrave from day one. Like,
he's literally my highest roster tight end in Dynasty, period. Like, I drafted him in literally every 4th round fantasy draft, rookie draft in 2023 possible.
Yeah, and for those of you that are curious with how the usage look, obviously, you know the points. I mean, the guy scored 2 touchdowns, 1 big yak play. Like, guy is just a really good fucking football player. But in terms of the usage, man, last week, 86% of the routes. This week, 79% of the routes. We also see the overall target involvement with another week with Jordan Love there really go up, man. Jordan Love is developing a rapport with Tucker Kraft that we were really hoping to see. And as a result, I mean, the last 2 weeks, the guy's been absolutely dynamite. 17.3, 24.8, both of them being the tight end 1 overall on the slate, or like on each of the slates. On top of that, off of those 2 weeks basically alone, obviously, he had a couple points before Jordan Love came back. You guys notice at the bottom, I'll quickly show it for one more second. That got him to tight end 3 on the season with the last 2 weeks of production he's put up on the table. I don't know if that's more indicative of Tucker Kraft being a baller or the tight end position being a wasteland.
The tight end position is a wasteland, but it could be possible that we have this year's Trey McBride on our hands with Tucker Kraft, where, a couple weeks go by, he's not really doing a whole lot, but, by week 5, week 6, or whatever it was last year when Trey McBride popped up on the waiver claims, he ended up winning people leagues, most likely. Let me ask you, rest of season rankings wise, who would you rather have? Let's go Tucker Kraft versus a couple players. Tucker Kraft, Dalton Kincaid. Who would you rather have?
Kraft easily.
Tucker Kraft, David Njoku.
Kraft.
Tucker Kraft, Jake Ferguson.
Ferguson.
Tucker Kraft. You'd rather Ferguson than Kraft?
Yeah, because I think with Kraft, you still have potentially Watson coming back later. Whereas with Ferguson, I know he's the number 2 on the Cowboys offense. Ferguson is literally like my tight end 3 or 4 rest of the season. That's more so I love both of them.
So you're basically taking Kraft over every non-Kelsey, Bowers, and McBride and Ferguson tight end.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm still a little hesitant to throw him up over some of the Kincaid and, Njoku guys, but I think I can definitely get there for sure. I think I can get there. Like,
I'm sorry, but like, I don't understand the love for Kincaid. Like, seriously, like, he's still splitting snaps with Dawson Knox, and this is an offense that doesn't throw the ball as much as the Packers do.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. What about, so people are asking Laporta versus Kraft.
I'm leaning Laporta right now, but like that's a question where if you ask me in 2 weeks, I think I'm going to end up on Kraft.
Yeah, I mean, Laporta has had no.
At the end of the day, he has to be considered a high to mid end tight end one rest of the season, and he was a guy that you probably picked up off of waivers 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, like the thing with Laporta that I keep coming back to is it would be nice if he was last year's Sam Laporta. He had like 10 touchdowns and like was giving you all these big spike weeks, but like both with it's funny because Pitts has had the same problem. The wide receiver 2 has thrown a massive wrench in their outlook, right? We all thought that Pitts was going to be the clear number 2 target on this offense coming into the year. We all thought that Laporta was going to be the clear number 2 target coming into this year on this offense, but both Darnell Mooney and Jameson Williams have been extremely involved. And that is not something that we thought was really going to happen. We definitely assumed that, yeah, St. Brown would get his and Drake London would get theirs. But these tight ends are going to be the number 2 targets, and that is not materialized. Like, Laporta has been fine. He was tight end 8 in week 1. He was tight end 12 in week 4 before the bye, but he has not had a single game over 10 PPR points. Not one.
No. And honest to God, like the more I'm thinking about it now, I think I would rather have Kraft. I think I would. Call me crazy. I think I would.
Crazy. I think Laporta is actually a half decent buy low for those of you guys that are like looking for tight ends. But if you already have Kelsey, Bowers, McBride, or Kraft or Ferguson, like I'd probably rather have those guys. But like if you're stuck with like Pitts had a good week, you could maybe move from Pitts to Laporta. I think I'd be okay doing that. Or if you could get up from whatever other like Goddard or something who's had a couple good weeks so far. Like I think I would be okay going after Laporta in that situation. But yeah, Laporta has been really, really strange. And as far as like what his tight end outlook is so far this year. We have a couple more takeaways that I quickly want to just rattle through before we get through some of the dynasty trades and stuff like that. Quick shout to DeAndre Swift, also had another big week as the starter for the Bears. Which again, I wasn't really expecting. Like 2 weeks ago, if you told me Swift was going to lose his job, I probably would have said he was going to. But, over 23 opportunities in 2 straight games and 67% of the snaps in 2 straight games, even though Roschon took a goal line to 2 goal line carries away. Swift looks a lot better. And I think just in general, the Bears offense is kind of coming into fold a little bit too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like just talking about the Bears offense as a whole, obviously, we had some pessimism coming into the week that they weren't playing well. But what was the one thing I kept saying on stream? If there was a get-right spot for the Bears, I said specifically passing attack because I figured that they'd be able to run the ball against the Carolina Panthers. But the main reason was that we hadn't really seen Caleb play consistently. We hadn't really seen the offensive line block consistently. Of course, Shane Waldron's going to be Shane Waldron. That passing offense looked like the passing offense I thought coming into the season. That's the passing offense that I thought Caleb Williams would be able to hold. That is the type of role that I thought DJ Moore could play. And even despite him not having a crazy stat line, like Roma Dunze has the role that we want him to have. So I think moving forward, if we see more of that Bears offense, there's going to be big days from multiple of those guys moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, DJ obviously had the massive day with 27 points against his former team. But yeah, the offense, I feel like a lot more bullish about Caleb specifically as a redraft streaming quarterback rest of season, and also just like his dynasty outlook too. He's looked a lot better in the last couple of games. I mean, some of this stuff, like we look back at like what we were thinking about these players week 1, week 2, week 3. It's like, should we have really been shocked that the team with the new offensive coordinator, the new quarterback, like all this, rookie quarterback as well, like should we have been shocked that they didn't look like the greatest offense after 2 or 3 games? Like, no. Like I think by week 9, the Bears could be where we all thought they maybe should have been to start the year. Like coming into the season, we drafted Caleb Williams as a top 12 quarterback in ADP. And we, especially from like a best ball perspective, were hoping that by the season's end, he might already have established himself as a top 10 real life quarterback. Now, Jayden Daniels has been the one that's stolen the show so far because he's been the guy that's come out and just absolutely performed at a high level. But it wouldn't totally shock me if Caleb Williams becomes an every week starter in people's fantasy lineups specifically. Like I know Moore and Odunze are obviously the big beneficiaries from a fantasy perspective, but Williams is the one that I'm kind of interested in.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Caleb Williams looked like the Caleb Williams we saw UC. There was a couple plays, man, where he was getting pressured and he was dancing behind the fucking pocket and making plays out of structure. And it's like, I miss that. Like
that's USC Caleb Williams right there. I mean, he's been over 20 PPR points in two of his last 3 games. So that's bullish news for everybody involved, because if they're actually throwing the ball for 250 passing yards a game because Caleb Williams looks like a competent franchise caliber quarterback, that's going to be a big time floor raiser for both the receivers. Cole Kmet becomes a streamable tight end, so on and so forth. And then the running game being a lot better in the last couple of weeks is big for the offense too, because Swift had been horrible prior to that.
Yeah, for sure. You also have listed here, like, the Broncos are just looking like a wild operation altogether. I'll let you take it away with that.
Yeah, like, so Bo Nix has made improvements over the last couple of games. So while we're on rookie quarterbacks, might as well keep going here. But like, what the hell are the Broncos doing? Like, Greg Dulcich is a healthy and active. You have Adam Troutman playing like the lead tight end role. Troy Franklin actually almost caught a bomb. I say almost caught because he dropped it, but he is creating some separation when he's out there. Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin combined for like 20 routes in this game, and LJ Humphrey and Josh Reynolds are fixtures of this offense. So I get it. Sean Payton came from the fucking Saints, and he likes these veteran wide receivers, and he always drools over size at the wide receiver position all the time. But like, dude, you're a young rebuilding team. Get your young
best players. Yeah.
Like, play your young players. Like, you need to know what Mims can do. You need to know what Franklin can do. I get why you don't want to play them, because maybe they're not ready for the spotlight or whatever, because they're young players. But while your quarterback is going through growing pains, why not throw the young players out there that he's maybe going to develop chemistry with? Now, I don't know if Mims or Franklin ever become a thing for this offense, but you're never going to find out like this.
Yeah, no, it is honestly, the Broncos are the one team in the league that I just have no interest in watching.
Like, Broncos Raiders in the 4:00 window. I have three monitors.
Skippable game I've ever seen.
I have three monitors. I was very clearly prioritizing the other three games.
Yeah, honest to God, like, it was the same thing with me, because with the Seattle Giants game, I mean, we'll talk about Tyrone Trace in a little bit, by the way. He looks like the exact guy that I was saying in the offseason, so I feel great about having him. I believe he was my RB6 or RB7 coming in, so feel great about that. Yeah, I mean, he looked phenomenal. The Seahawks passing offense initially struggled, then started putting some production, but too little too late, because the Giants, like, was that the best game Daniel Jones has played all year?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you know, it's a wild stat that I saw. Jacob Gibbs put this out on Twitter today. You know, the Seahawks have run the least amount of plays in the NFL from the red zone this year.
Really?
Yeah.
They're just getting so many long touchdowns.
Because it's mainly like DK long bombs, or Kenneth Walker breaks off a long time. Like, they just have not been in the red zone. It's a weird offense so far this year. They've just been scoring from far away, as opposed to in close. But yeah, the Giants playing their best game without their starting quote unquote running back and their best offensive player in general in Malik Neighbors is pretty wild that they played that good of a game against a good defense in Seattle.
Can we talk about the fact that shout out Christian if he's in here, like, the whole Wan'Dale Robinson thing that was like going on? Like, the thesis for why I had him lower is like, oh, I don't think they can move the ball at all against the Seahawks defense. They moved the ball at will, and like, it was like, I feel like I wanted the take. He ended up scoring a touchdown, but he only had like 36 yards on like 4 catches or whatever.
He had 6 catches for 36 yards in PPR. What did Christian say? He said he was going to be a top 15 receiver this week. Let me take a look. Where did he end up finishing? He was 13th. He had 16 PPR points.
Hey, Monday Night Football, baby. Monday Night Football. Yeah,
unless Amari Shaheed or Worthy outscore him.
But like, the point is like, it was like the opposite way of it happening, because it's like the Giants scored a lot of points. Nobody expected that. We expected Wan'Dale to have a ton of targets. It's not like he had like a crazy receiving line, 6 for 36. But like, we also didn't expect a touchdown. He scored a touchdown. It's like every single part of that Giants offensive projection just went the other way. It was so weird.
Yeah, it was a little weird. I'm curious to see, because a lot of the spot, like, I mean, we had, how many spot start running backs were on my running back tier list this week? There was a ton of guys. Sermon, Tracy, Madison, Brown. Even too. Yeah, Brown. Like, there was a lot of guys. Most of them got home. I mean, like, Sermon scores the touchdown. He had like 18 PPR points or whatever it was. We also had a good game out of Tracy, like you said. Madison didn't quite have the greatest game in the world.
Shout out Darius Slayton, by the way. I saw Ethan say that.
Darius Slayton, I mean, so let your league mates spend money on him. And Malik Neighbors coming back, he's unstartable after that.
I don't disagree, but I mean, at the end of the day, you got to give him his flowers. He played a good
game. Darius
game.
Slayton was always, the thesis was 18th round best ball or nothing. Like, that was the only time you were ever investing in Darius Slayton, because you're never going to know when to start this guy. He's going to have 3 20-point games every single year, and he's like a
better MVS.
Yeah, literally. That's exactly the type of player that Darius Slayton is. So, I mean, he's good for Daniel Jones because he gives him a little bit of a ceiling sometimes. And Malik Neighbors, once he's back on the field, I mean, Malik's gonna cook the rest of the season, as we know. And Slayton will be back to running 40% of the routes once Malik Neighbors is back on the field.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I wasn't gonna call him a waiver ad, but
people are though. Like people are like, oh, you should go pick up Darius Slayton. He's a great waiver ad this week. I'm like, yeah, you're never catching fire like that again. With Darius Slayton's production, like, good luck predicting when that happens again.
For sure. And I did see you listed here. Obviously, I mean, we knock on wood, it's looking potentially like we both won in the flock league, assuming Harrison Butker doesn't score over 23
I think
points.
it would be funny if you got fleeced out of your matchup just like Mason got fleeced out of his. And I will say,
I would find that
type of game that, like I already said it, I could see both kickers just absolutely taking over this game.
I mean, fair play. The content would be great, but at the end of the day, I would not be happy. Anyways, you mentioned in your home league, you were able to secure the W, correct?
Oh, I killed Dylan this week. I dropped 173 points in my home league. I had Drake London on Thursday night. I know
Debo was pissed.
Yeah, I had Brandon Ayuk. I had Tyrone Tracy. I had Tucker Kraft in my tight end spot. I had who else did I have at wide receiver? I had Pittman had a decent game. T. Higgins had 29 points. Like my whole team snapped pretty much. And I'm trying to make a trade with Arnold right now where I'm securing a better quarterback option because he has both Jordan Love and Jayden Daniels. So I'm going to try and work a trade around one of those two guys. He does have Jaden Reed and Wicks also. So I think he's more likely to move Daniels of the two of them. But yeah, that'll be interesting because between Purdy and Richardson, those are like the two quarterbacks I'm rostering right now. And like Purdy is like not the 49ers piss me off, man, because they get to the red zone so often and they kick like 10 field goals per game on the 5-yard line. Like they drive me insane. The 49ers. Anybody who has Jordan Mason or Ayuk or whatever knows the struggle because they never go for a fourth down in the red zone. It's like, 4th and 1 from the fucking 4-yard line and the 49ers are kicking it. It's like, why the hell are we doing this? Like, go for a fourth down. You passive ass coach, Kyle Shanahan. You have a good offense. You can score touchdowns.
Yeah. In terms of my home league too, it was I don't know how my team is winning games right now. I assuming that what do I need to fade? Basically, Justin Watson doesn't score like 70 points. But yeah, that's gonna happen. I have a 99%.
I think that's probably safe that he doesn't do that.
Is it this one? Yeah. So those are the injuries and bye weeks I was dealing with. Jahmyr Gibbs on bye, Neighbors out, Kupp out, Njoku out, Brooks out, Nakua out. So yeah, you can see the team is pretty banged up. This is the lineup that will end up potentially having the most points scored in my league this week. Justin Fields, Roschon Johnson.
That's disgusting. That's disgusting.
Is that crazy. Not 2024 fantasy football in a nutshell, though?
Yeah, Rico having 19. So like I said, I didn't see the game last night. I didn't even look at the box score. So Rico having 19
awesome last night.
Pretty nice there.
Dude, he was awesome last night. I'm not even gonna lie. As long as Harrison Butker doesn't score 23 points, yes, and Corey is just demolished.
Yeah, I just demolished Green Bean's money this week. But yeah, I'm hoping I can keep up that momentum because I have a very difficult matchup this week because I'm playing Mason's team without Mahomes, without Kelsey, and without Achane. All of them are on bye. So, and of course, Mason draws.
He's going to be making clips on that.
He's going to be making clips about it. You know what? I'm not going to pander to Mason and say that, I have bye weeks, like congrats on your win or whatever. I'm just going to go out there and try and perform the best I can. And if I beat him, then I'm going to be insufferable and say, hey, I can't believe I beat you with all these bye weeks. But the challenge that I have here is my bench is like loaded with very good depth options that are high-end waiver claims. And I have to both replace my quarterback and tight end because they're on bye this week. And I currently roster no second quarterback, no second tight end. So between like Braylon Allen, Zach Charbonnet, Antonio Gibson, Khalil Shakir, Tank Dell, Wan'Dale Robinson, like these are my depth players that I might have to drop to pick up a second quarterback and a second tight end. So what I'm trying to do right now this week is make a trade so that I can send 2 players for one, maybe upgrading my quarterback spot with Patrick Mahomes, or maybe just getting, 2 of my depth players off my team or one of my starters upgraded or something like that. I got to figure out something this week.
If you need a quarterback and a tight end to play this week, I'll give you Dak and Pitts for Mahomes and Kelsey. There you go.
Yeah, no, definitely not. What I might have to do potentially too is worst case scenario, I could always just sell off like Braylon Allen for Fab or something like that and recoup some of my Fab and get a open roster spot on my team. But it's going to be a weird week for me because it sucks that I have the Mahomes Kelsey stack right now when my team has all this good depth that I want to hold on to. Because if I drop Gibson or if I drop Braylon Allen, or if I drop Charbonnet, like they're going to be high end waiver claims for anybody in our league. Like you guys are going to be dropping Fab on those guys. So 100%. Don't love that for my team, but we could probably pivot off of the takeaways unless you had anything else that you wanted to talk about. You mentioned that week 6 has a pretty loaded schedule. If you want to just quickly rattle off what we're looking at for next week.
Just one thing, because I've seen Shy say this. I mean, you might just get it with the Rico. This guy was always a talented player. He needed some opportunities in this offense. He got them this week, ran hard, felt good. Anyways, we'll move on to week 6 matchups, because this is a slate that you do not want to be missing. This is not the week where you go pumpkin picking with your significant other or whatever the fuck. You don't want to go to a drive-in. I'm glad you know
what goes on in relationships with significant others.
So. Trying my best to relate to you guys, but none of all that shit. You're going to tell your girlfriends, you're going to tell your wives, you're going to tell your boyfriends, whoever's watching here, hey, listen, like, We're sitting on the couch and we're watching football this weekend because you're not missing it. Starts on Thursday, for the record. Like, you're not going out Thursday night for some drinks with the boys, assuming that there is a football or assuming that there's no football TV there. If you're going to a bar, it has to be a TV. It has to have this game going on because you got Seahawks and 49ers on Thursday night. Oh, let's wrap up. You think, London game. London games are gross. I don't want to wake up to watch a London game. You're going to want to watch the London game when you got potentially the 2 generational quarterback storylines there, where Trevor Lawrence taking on Caleb Williams. We got the Cardinals-Packers. Is there any single stop that's going to be had in that game? I don't know. Commanders-Ravens. I mean, I just mentioned it with the Jayden Daniels bit, but are these the 2 best teams in football right now based off what we have seen in the first 5 weeks of the year?
Yeah, I mean, they've been both pretty unstoppable, at least on offense, for sure.
Cowboys Lions, I mean, rematch of last year's. If you guys were watching last year, week 17, ineligible man controversy, even though everybody ignores that the Cowboys literally got called for a penalty that the Lions committed the drive before that even got the Lions the chance to end up winning the game at the end. Crazy. Bengals Giants Sunday Night Football. Obviously, Malik Neighbors potentially back. You got the LSU guys on the other side with Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow. Again, neither team also plays defense, for the record. We'd mentioned that in the Cardinals Packers. Giants, the offense may or may not, but Malik Neighbors may very well, against that Cincinnati secondary, will them to a victory, because Cincy secondary has been carved up.
Yeah, what week of the season was OBJ's catch against the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football? Are we going to see a Malik Neighbors similar coming out? Like, everybody knows
week 5 or week 6, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was about week 5 or week 6, so maybe he's going to make an OBJ caliber catch on Sunday Night Football. And then you have listed here too, the Bills and the Jets wrapping up the week 6 slate on Monday Night Football. Should be interesting. I'm a little bit less enthused about that game. I don't need to see the Jets on primetime anymore after the amount of time I've seen it. As a Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson bag holder, I would like them to be buried in the 1 p.m. slate for the rest of the season, to be honest, because I'm sick of everybody having their takes about the Jets, but we'll have to wait and see.
November 24th, 2014. So
it was like week 12 then, probably.
Yeah.
It's like a month and a half from now. So, I mean, we're talking like week 11, week 12, probably.
Yeah, it felt earlier than that when I was watching as a kid.
It's probably because OBJ was hurt during his rookie season, so he missed a couple games in between that one. So it felt like his coming out party for that reason. But anyways, you guys know we also do some Dynasty trade talk on this channel on these Monday streams, because it's important to gauge the market value on some of these players, on and so forth. Aaron had a awesome trade that I thought was worth discussing here. And I always farm these out to Twitter. So if you guys want your trade featured on the show, about 9 a.m. Monday mornings is when I farm them out. So have your Dynasty trades ready. He made 2 trades, essentially trading 2 ones for Olave, getting a second back, and then flipping said second for Bucky Irving and Tyrone Tracy simultaneously within like a 2-day span, I think, or a day span. What are your thoughts on this deal?
Okay.
Or these 2 deals, I guess.
Let's wrap our head here. So 2 mid to late first for Olave Irving. So for
Olave Irving and Tracy
is what he would have received. Right. This is like very fair value, I would say, because like you said, it ends up being 2 ones for Olave. Yeah, you know what? If you're contending, which you probably have said here, considering it's 2 mid to late first, you're probably considering it's a playoff team. I'm fine with paying this, because I mean, when we're looking at Chris Olave, he profiles to be top 15-ish level wide receiver rest of the season. And then Bucky Irving and Tyrone Tracy, do they have the most, high value in terms of the dynasty market? Not necessarily. However, both of them have the path to potentially being some of the highest implied upside plays rest of the season. And again, if you're a contending team, 2 mid to late firsts, maybe you're looking at Trey Harris there.
Yeah,
Ollie
something
Gordon.
like that. I think it's probably a good deal for both sides. I think the going rate for Olave on the market is a mid one and a mid to late one and a mid to late two. That's probably what Olave is worth on the market, give or take. I sold him for that actually before the season started, and I think he's worth about the same thing now.
Yeah.
And then if you make up the difference between a mid to late two versus a mid to late one, Bucky Irving and Tracy are probably worth about late twos in their own right, maybe mid to late twos if you're really high on them. So I think it's a pretty fair deal, to be honest. I mean, I look at this and I love Bucky Irving, the ability that I've seen from him. I like Tyrone Tracy, the ability that I've seen from them. I think there will be sell high windows on those two players where it looks like they're going to be starting running backs heading into an NFL season at some point during the course of their rookie contracts. Yeah,
like there could be a case where the combination of them is worth a one. And at that point, you basically paid a mid to late one to get Chris Olave. So yeah, I don't mind that move at all as well. We can move on to the next deal here from Lumber. And we do see, as you guys see on the screen, he was able to receive Javonte Williams, JJ McCarthy, a 2, a 3, and a 4. He gives up George Kittle, Ramondre Stevenson, and Will Levis. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm almost fine just paying this price for JJ McCarthy straight up. And in fact, I actually am very fine paying this price for JJ McCarthy straight up. So the fact that you got Javonte, the 2, the 3, and the 4, I think that's extra gravy on the deal for you.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, an early second for Ramondre is an easy washout there. Like, I mean, Ramondre's removed from the deal. I mean, maybe early second for Kittle even is probably a washout.
I would much rather have a 25-2 at this point than Ramondre.
Yeah, well, let's say Javonte in the early 2 wash out Ramondre and Kittle, or Javonte in the picks wrap out, like, and then it's Will Levis for fucking JJ McCarthy. Like, we talked about it on last week's stream, or I can't remember what we talked about. I think it was last week's recap stream, but like, if you're a rebuilding team and you're not sending offers for JJ McCarthy right now, I don't know what you're doing, because again, I'm not going to say that in the limited preseason games we saw, JJ McCarthy looks like a franchise quarterback, but it helps. And
you want help for that too? You want other notice for that too? So aside from Roman Wilson, like, this year's Michigan's offensive weapons, very similar. I mean, Colson Loveland was our best weapon last year. He's still our best weapon this year. Look at the difference in quarterback play between Michigan this year and Michigan last year. Because a lot of people were like, "Oh man, JJ McCarthy, product of Michigan scheme." Yeah, no, like, he did a lot.
You could argue Harbaugh had a lot to do with it too.
No doubt. I think Harbaugh definitely had but in terms of the actual scheme of the offense, like, they're running very similar stuff to what they were last year in terms of the pre-snap motion, in terms of they were giving up front. It's just when you have JJ McCarthy versus having Alex Orji, Jack Tuttle, and fucking Davis Warren, like, that's the difference between a first round top 10 caliber quarterback and guys that are going to be packing up. I was going to say bagging our groceries, but yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's pretty much where you're at with all those guys. So yeah, I mean, McCarthy has to be a rebuilding trade target for a lot of you guys, especially if you're in a position where you thought you were contending and you're trying to tear it down to a rebuild. I think JJ makes a lot of sense, because he's not going to score any points for you. You're trying to get that point production off of your team. And there's like a lot of quarterbacks kind of caught in limbo where JJ McCarthy is valued right now. And you could probably offload a lot of guys like that to get to McCarthy and, pocket some picks or whatever you're looking to do there. So definitely like what Lumber was able to do in that trade. Downtown also sent this one here. Superflex PPR start 9. He traded Dontavian Wicks for Trey Benson. He said he's in a good position to contend next year. Just needed running backs. So he's looking to add running backs either in this year's class, 2025. Said his first should be top 5. Also has 2 seconds. And then he goes out and gets Benson for Wicks. I'm assuming he's pretty strong at wide receiver to make a deal like that.
Solid move, honestly. Like, I think that's a fair value deal. Wicks is going to give you more intermediate, and then in Benson, if he ends up getting the job, now I am less bullish about his rest of season standing, because we literally just saw a game where James Conner had 100% of the rushing attempts for the Cardinals. However, going into next year, I think it's a very real possibility they do end up handing the keys to Benson. And if that's the case, I mean, Benson, every time he's touched the ball, he still looks like that talented player that we both had coming into the offseason. It's just the unfortunate thing is, like, maybe we were too quick on the demise of James Conner, because the guy looks fucking good right now. I think for
Yeah,
2025,
he looks great. And I mean, to be fair, the same thing we said about Aaron Jones and Alvin Kamara and stuff also applies to James Conner.
Absolutely.
The second he starts to deal with some kind of injury, he's an older guy. It's possible he starts to seed work, and maybe Trey Benson isn't dead. And hopefully for my best ball shares, he's not. But
Agreed.
There's a good chance that, as the season goes on, he becomes harder and harder to acquire. I think the lowest price you're ever going to get on Trey Benson is right now, if you're going to go and buy him. And I think he also makes a ton of sense for those of you guys like Downtown points out here who are 1 year punting. You have a situation where you're hoping to probably contend next year, and you're looking for running back production that's both going to help you in the short term next year and also has longevity. Because if Trey Benson, let's say James Conner went down with a 3 to 4 week injury right now, and Trey Benson came in, played 85% of the snaps, but then all the rest of the season, James Conner comes back and he's the starting running back yet again. People are going to use that window. They're going to see Trey Benson got the workload, and then James Conner probably not going to be back with the Cardinals, or at least not going to be the feature back of the Cardinals for very much longer. And Trey Benson's going to be a top 10 dynasty running back.
Yeah, pretty much that's how I see it as well. By the way, Mike, I am also a Michigan fan, so trust me, it was painful too seeing how people just completely slandered JJ McCarthy last year. But yeah.
And Connor has never made it through a full season healthy as well. Yeah, I think by week 10 or something, it wouldn't shock me. Like, for those of you guys that are, I hold on to my fab in case of a huge waiver addition late in the season.
That's the fab.
Benson's the guy that I could definitely see being the everybody's blowing all their fab on him in week 11 kind of guy.
Hey, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to knock on wood. But if you remember when me and Mason made the trade, my thesis on Zach Benson. Zach Benson's a hockey player, by the way. My thesis on Trey Benson was, when it comes to week 6, week 7, and you guys want to blow all your fab on Trey Benson, he's going to be on Team Daniel at 21. What week are we going into?
Week 6, week 7. I mean, Danny, you should probably stop jinxing other players to get injured as far as your own team.
I've already dealt with all my own.
You did say you called Nico Collins a god on our stream on Sunday morning, and you said last time I called someone a god, he went down, and that was Rashee Rice. And then you said, I knocked on wood, it's fine. Nico Collins won't go down. And then Nico Collins did in fact go down. He's not going to be out long term by the looks of it, but it still kind of sucks that anytime you wish injury upon anything, it's not backfire. It's backfiring on you right now.
Hey, you know what though?
I should knock on wood because somebody's going down on my team tonight.
I will say though, Jalen Tolbert saw his fallen brothers. He already knew his brother Rashee was out with a knee injury. He already knew that Malik needed the week to recover from getting his noggin bumped a little bit too hard on Thursday night. And he knew that Nico Collins came out after the first quarter. You know what Jalen Tolbert did in response? 10 targets, 87 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, it's the next man up on Team Daniel at 21, whether it's Tolbert, whether it's anybody I put into that wide receiver spot. They know they're competing for the best coach in the league.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's talk about the early waiver slate here. Of course, Danny will have you covered tomorrow with the waiver wire. A lot of it is like fallout from last week's goated waiver wire slate, where everybody that we talked about, last week was like, is still kind of like 30% rostered, or at least that's the way I look at it right now. For me, there's 2 honorable mention stashes that I have here. Both Jalen Polk and Adonai Mitchell are both commanding the targets right now. Mitchell is not getting the routes currently, but he has a 30% targets per route run rate on the season. Again, we might need an injury to Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman, or Josh Downs for him to get on the field full time, but it's possible he starts to work into the rotation a little bit more because he's playing.
Polk also barely missed on the game-winning touchdown. If you're watching,
he did, and he played 97% of the snaps this week after running. I think it was like 85% of the routes the prior week, and he had a 24% target share in week 4, 21% target share this week. So Jalen Polk, if you're in need of wide receiver help, definitely a good option. My number 5, or my early number 5 guy right now, is Tyrone Tracy, and the reason I have him at number 5 and not higher is because a lot of doctors are speculating that Singletary could be back this week. Of course, if Singletary, we get some news, today, tomorrow, whatever, that Singletary is not going to be back in time for week 6, Tyrone Tracy would probably jump up to like 3, 2, maybe even 1 on this list, because he did get 14 PPR points, 62% of the snaps, got a good percentage of the carries. Like you said, the Bengals, their week 6 opponent, do not play defense. So possible that Tyrone Tracy's a really good ad this week if he's still available. 34% of sleeper leagues he's rostered right now. So ESPN and Yahoo players, I'm sure he's rostered even less than that. So good option.
Dable, if you're watching this, let's sit your incumbent 5'7" little puny hamster with Devin Singletary. Let's play the best running back on the roster next week. Even if Singletary's back, Tyrone Tracy's the better player. Let's figure it out.
So I guess you're contending now that he is too low on my list at number 5. You'd put him higher than that just because I'm putting him on this.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with the analysis. Like, I think it is perfectly fine. However, I think at this point, like, if you're Brian Daboll and you know you have a young team, what is the point of prodding out Devin Singletary for decent production week in and week out when you have a guy in your bench and Tyrone Tracy who's literally a rookie showing that level of creating ability in his
coaches like Devin Singletary, man.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. Like, again, like, I agree with where you have him slated because I think based off coaching tendencies, he's probably going to go back to Singletary. But dude, even as a Cowboys fan, I know I am biased watching Tyrone Tracy in college, but like the level of play from Singletary to Tracy was night and fucking day. Like, the guy was just making everybody fucking miss yesterday, dude.
Yeah, he was great. He was great. He was breaking off long runs too, which Singletary, of course, doesn't have the speed really to do that.
For the record, I'm also only 5'9".
Yeah, and I'm only like 5'9" too. Like the last time we saw Singletary, he was like getting stuffed by the Cowboys defense and couldn't do anything. So it's possible that if Singletary comes back this week and starts to play poorly, that maybe Tracy could be more of a long-term play regardless of injury, because we said coming into the year that maybe Tracy outright wins this job. It doesn't necessarily have to be due to a Singletary injury, but sometimes that means that Singletary misses a game or two and then Tracy takes the job by the horns and never gives it up. Like, sometimes it is due to injury, but it's not like ACL tear injury.
Yeah, I mean, the guy played well enough to get at least another start going forward. And who knows, maybe that is the case. Maybe like Singletary's on the fence about returning this week. And because Brian Daboll saw Tyrone Tracy played really well, maybe he gives him another week. Like, that happens a lot too in the coaching where, like, if Tracy just had a terrible game, like, they would do whatever they can to get Singletary back on the field versus because he had a good game, maybe they're a little bit more cautious with the overall return from injury. And on top of that too, not only did Tyrone Tracy have the game that he did, if you guys were watching that game, Eric Gray was fucking annoying at the beginning of the game. Has that fumble on the 1 yard line that gets returned 100 yards for a touchdown the other way and basically sat the pine the rest of the game.
He did, yeah, and that's an interesting development too. I wonder if Tracy has the game that he did if Eric Gray doesn't fumble that ball. And shout out, I had the Seahawks defense in Flock League, so really appreciated that swing of getting points scored on my defense and my defense scoring points subsequently with about a half inch that he was short of the goal line on that touchdown that Gray would have scored there. Jordan Whittington, I have at number 4. Still only rostered in 34% of leagues, getting the routes, getting the snaps. If you guys are in need of wide receiver help, Cooper Kupp appears like he won't be back in week 6. Do the Rams have a bye this week? I just want to make sure that they don't, because I think they actually might have a bye this week. Yeah, they do. They do have a bye this week. Okay, so maybe I'm going to have to move Whittington down the list a little bit just because there's a chance that Kupp is back in week 7 after their bye. But I think he's still worth a speculative add if you're in need of wide receiver help. Maybe just wait a week until you add him because he might be dropped in a lot of leagues going into the Rams bye week. So probably going to move him down below Tracy for sure, but definitely still a guy that I think is worth rostering. He looks pretty solid.
Yeah, with Whittington too, the thing that I come back to as well is he can very well, if one of Puka or Kupp is off the field, I think he could still be very, very good. Because quite frankly, I mean, the way he's been playing the last 2 weeks, like, he looks like a starting caliber NFL receiver. So what I'm coming back to is that even when Cooper Kupp comes back, what's telling me Whittington can't play that Nakua role until Nakua comes back?
No, he definitely could. I think it's very possible that that's how they want to utilize him because he is the same cut from the same cloth of receiver where it's just this guy's going to get open on zone coverage routes and he's probably going to work over the middle of the field and so on and so forth. So definitely an interesting add. Again, probably maybe not somebody that you want to burn a roster spot on going into his bye week, but if he is available and you have like terrible options that you don't need anymore, you could always just use him as a stash. Let's talk about Jalen Tolbert. Let's talk about Jalen
popcorn. Hey, if you guys are watching right now, turn up the volume because
he was on my waiver list last week too.
Hey, but this is finally the week where you're actually optimistic about rostering Jalen Tolbert. Be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I still would rather have Wandale, who you traded me in the Flock League for Jalen Tolbert, but Jalen Tolbert, 89% of the routes, first game without Brandon Cooks of 3 more games that he's going to be out of the lineup. He is placed on IR last week, so there's a very good chance that Jalen Tolbert keeps up this route participation. 26% target share, 42% of the team's air yards, 50% of the end zone targets, 56% of the third and fourth down targets, and a top 11 performance in PPR this week, including the game-winning touchdown. So he looks a lot better. I'll give him that.
Like the thesis is always, hey, he's going to run starting routes and maybe he looks better going into year 3. Did I think there would be a game where he'd go out there and, I mean, what he did,
win you the game.
He first of all, yeah, won us the game. Second of all, like he went out there and alpha CeeDee Lamb last night. That's what he did. Again, that's not going to be the case.
Defenses are obviously focusing more on Lamb, so it's probably favorable coverage and things of that nature.
Yeah, CeeDee Lamb's still going to be my wide receiver 1 to my wide receiver 3 every single week.
So this might be a hot take. I would rather have Jamar Chase rest of the season over CeeDee Lamb, dude. The way that Chase is playing right now.
Well, I think you can argue any of them. Chase, Jefferson, Nico, assuming he's healthy, St. Brown. Like, honest to God, you just want one of those like top 6.
Yeah, you just want one of them. But I mean, just given that Lamb is being focused, like this was the thing I was a little worried about.
Maybe Tolbert popping off helps it moving forward, dude.
It does. But I was worried a little bit that CeeDee Lamb, after a breakout season where he was first team All Pro and had like 1,700 yards last year, that defenses would just like literally go out of their way to stop him. And I think that's what's happened so far for CeeDee Lamb, where we're not seeing the big performances. And I think that's partially to blame. Why?
I think part of it specifically last night. I mean, he still had 10 targets. It's just him and Dak were a little bit on the bad page. Sorry, he had 9 targets. My apologies. Him and Dak just weren't really on the same page. I mean, for example, the end zone pick. Like literally after the play, he comes back to the huddle. He's like, jump ball forward. Like, I got you. Like basically saying like, throw it to me high. I'm going to go up and get it. Cause I think Dak expected him to curl back to the sideline and catch it on the pylon, whereas CD wanted it up. Again, that's something that you would have on the same page if you spent the training camp not waiting for a contract, but I digress. I will say, though, going into the week, if you're the Steelers and you know Brandon Cooks is on IR and you know no other receivers, I mean, Jalen Tolbert had a couple of weeks, but he hadn't really like fully proven himself yet. Like your game plan is going to be take 88 out of the game. And that's basically what they were entirely focusing. And we saw like Ferguson made some great plays after the catch. Rico Dowdle, obviously his best game of the year. Jalen Tolbert, I mean, he was unbelievable. Like I can't describe how well he played last night. When they needed him to make plays, the guy was always fucking there and delivering. Like that's I didn't think I'd be able to say that about Jalen Tolbert.
I need to see what my exposure to Jalen Tolbert ended up being in Best Ball Mania, because I can't remember if I ever drafted him, but we'll see if I did.
Dude, he's like one of my highest rostered receivers.
I actually drafted him 5% of the time. For a guy that wasn't always drafted, that's pretty high.
You want to know what my rostership was? And this is when he was like a 17th, 18th rounder, 19%.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good. Anyways, yeah, Tolbert, definitely the training camp is such copium. Yeah, that is funny. But yeah, definitely Jalen Tolbert. If you need wide receiver help, he's a guy that you can throw into your lineup next week. Yeah, right off the waiver wire. And he is rostered in only 17 of sleeper leagues right now. Next up, my number 2, depending on what you would need, I could put this guy number 1 for sure. If you were not in a winning position, like if you were 2 and 3 or whatever after this week, Tank Bigsby was the number 1 back of any running back on the week this week. He had 40% of the snaps, and he ended up housing a crazy long run, as well as the first touchdown he scored was even crazier, where he like bowled into the end zone after like literally putting
he looked like a tank.
He looked like Tank Bigsby. And again, we already kind of took the mini like victory lap as far as like I had Tank Bigsby RB4 in the 2023 class. After who were the running backs in that class? Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, Zach Charbonnet. I had Tank Bigsby RB4 over some of the other guys that were in that class. A lot of people really like Tajay Spears that year. A lot of people had Achane. I mean, obviously Achane is better than fucking Tank Bigsby, so that looks pretty stupid. But I really did like Tank Bigsby's film coming out of school. And, Roshan, Chase Brown were in that class, a bunch of other dudes. But Tank Bigsby looks great. He looks really good. He looks a lot better than ETN right now. So whether you're picking him up just as a stash in case he's a great handcuff if ETN misses time, or if he outright wins this job, he is a great pickup at the moment right now. I think everybody I'm talking about right now, as far as like fab percentage, is more like 5 to 15% fab ads. We don't have as good of a waiver slate this week as we did last week, but I still feel pretty good about Bigsby's long-term role.
Yeah, actually, that made me curious where exactly how I had it listed going in. So going into the draft, yeah, he was your RB4, Roshan 5, Chase 6, Sean Tucker, Kendre, Devon Achane, Tajay Spears.
Yeah, Achane was way too fucking low for me, man. Way too low.
I mean, outside of obviously, I'd rank Achane over Charbonnet. I feel pretty good about mine. So I had it Bijan, Gibbs, Charbonnet, Achane, Chase Brown, Tank Bigsby were my top 6. I had it Sean Tucker, which, Kendre Miller, but I had Roschon and Taj as my 9 and 10. So, I mean, pretty good. Pretty good. You froze for me.
Oh, for you guys too. There he is. Okay.
Oh,
but yeah, you mentioned Spears and Roschon at the end there. Yeah, for what it's worth, when Achane went to the Dolphins, I completely course corrected and ranked him like RB3 or RB4 in the class because I was like, that was the absolute best place he could have gone to. So that was like the RB3 or after Charbonnet, the RB4, which like I said was Bigsby before the draft for me, to RB10 or 11 in that class were like all within 10, 20, 30 points in my grading scale. Like they were all like very clearly like 4th round talents or 3rd round talents. But yeah, Sean Tucker stonks are looking like a yikes after both of us had him as like top 8 running back in the 2023 class.
What's the difference between managing moderator and standard moderator? Oh, okay. I'm just going to do that. You know what, Christian, you've been a faithful of the stream. So I gave you a mod because you asked.
He said, I want a wrench. Sure. Yeah. We'll give you a wrench. We got Flet's got a wrench. Brock has a wrench. Spicy's got a wrench.
Hey, Christian, comment in the chat and you'll see it. By the way, shout out Sean Tucker. He had like a crazy kick return in that game. No,
he did. He like bowled the guy. So it's funny because I love that he's on the Bucks because it's just like classic, the guy that I liked in the draft process, and he's just like on Tampa Bay now. But he's like literally a kick returner, and he like can't find the field. So yeah, he's probably not a top 8 running back from that class.
I'm gonna have to give another wrench because I thought Jay Metal had a wrench. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, Jay Metal should probably have a wrench as well. But my early number 1 waiver ad right now, this would be if you're like in need of short-term running back help. We talked about it at the beginning with the injuries, but Ty Chandler, who is on bye this week, Aaron Jones on bye. Most fantasy docs expect Aaron Jones to miss the next 1 to 2 games, even including the fact that he has a bye week. So there's a very good chance that Chandler will be not a super high pickup for a lot of people where you don't have to drop 30% of your fab on the guy because Jones is on bye this week and could be back in week 6 or could be back in week 7 when the bye is over. But if you need running back help and you can afford to roster a guy who's on bye this week, Ty Chandler to me getting Jones played like 25% of the snaps in this game and Chandler still had like 61%. So I think if Jones misses any time,
he's about
bye week, we're talking about a 70-80% share running back, in my opinion.
Now, with that being said, I saw a comment of Tank Bigsby or Rico Dowdle. If Rico Dowdle's available, he'd be the number 1.
Yeah, Rico's well over 50% rostered in most leagues right now. He definitely would be like my number 1 if he was available. Same goes for Chase Brown, especially if Zach Moss misses time. If those guys are available, they are definitely like 30 to 50% snap or fab percentage guys, maybe even more.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think he pretty much handled it. Again, I'm going to have the full top 10 list for you guys tomorrow. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Really solid waiver week overall. I mean, especially
it's a good fill in the blanks week.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily as good as last week where we had great fill in the blanks pieces, but also a couple really high end pickups like Kraft and Wicks and some of the guys that we talked about. Keep an eye on the waiver wire too. If Wicks potentially gets dropped in your league, he absolutely would be a drop a lot of fab on him type of guy if somebody rage drops him after they threw him into their lineup.
Yeah, for the record, if Wicks got dropped, like I would rather him than even like Jalen Tolbert.
Casuals will drop him. I bet you right now in half of the casual leagues in fantasy, people will just rage drop Dontavian Wicks for like Darius Slayton or something stupid where they're like chasing the point production.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, when you get a young player that has a 25% target share, yeah, sure. Does he have to work out in his hands? Probably. Maybe he needs a couple more targets than the average player because he's missing 2 of them by drops. Sure. But he's commanding the targets because
he's Garrett Wilson light. Garrett Wilson had 22 targets this week and had like 100 yards.
Yeah, no, exactly. But either way, appreciate you guys for tuning in. So 457 strong right now. If you guys haven't already, 61 likes on the stream. Let's pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers. Let's get that to at least triple digits. If you're watching right now, maybe we covered a topic you like. Maybe you just enjoy the overall entertainment, the banter. You obviously got the biased Cowboys fan. You got the Bucks fan over there too. Malton about the way his team crumbled, which I'm used to.
You pretend like you and I are the same type of fan. When we lose a close game, I'm like, that was an entertaining game. Baker played well. You know, I like full disclosure.
When we lose a game, it ruins my week.
Yeah, it doesn't ruin my week. Like I'm annoyed that the Bucks lost that game because it should have been a win based on how we were winning the entire game. But I'm not going to let it ruin my week. I'm not on the team. My fantasy team's losses hurt me more for sure than the Bucks losing.
I wear my heart on my sleeve, man. When we lose a game that we should have won, I mean, that's why, like, dude, if we lost that game against the Steelers with how much we moved the ball and the turnovers that we had, I'd be in a completely different mood right now.
Yeah, he would not be wearing a Dak jersey, that's for sure. But also the Nico Collins jersey curse looks like it's not great for you right now.
As soon as I get the jersey, he rips the hammy. Nice.
Yeah, Danny's bias carries this way.
I appreciate that.
But yeah, the likes are rookie numbers, fellas. You got to get those up. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. We will be live later tonight before Monday Night Football, Chiefs and Saints. We'll have you guys with underdog picks. We'll have you with any other questions. We didn't obviously get through very many questions in here. Appreciate you guys. If you want to submit us a question, you know how to do it. It's linked down below. You can go to flockfantasy.com, submit a question, get your team reviewed, all that kind of stuff. And subscription for Flock Fantasy as well. Tons of content that you get involved with that. Our rest of season rankings, weekly rankings, dynasty rankings. Going to be doing a big time overhaul as soon as we're done with this stream. I'm definitely going to be doing a huge overhaul of my dynasty rankings and my rest of season rankings as well. But season rankings, I update them like every 3 days pretty much. So if you guys are interested in that, that is available on Flock Fantasy. And of course, Underdog Fantasy, the main sponsor of this channel. If you want to sign up over there, get some picks in for tonight's game, promo code FSE when you sign up. You can tail our picks, as you guys can see there. And I do believe, whoops, that's not what we want. I can pull up the free pick, which is Patrick Mahomes free pick, higher or lower. You guys can get that as a new customer only on Underdog Fantasy. Boosttober is going nuts right now. They have boosts like every single day, 20% profit and all these kind of boosted pickup specials. Definitely be tuning into the app every day.
Those were things I've been picking at the last couple of weeks. They're something I'm going to sit down and fully get updated for you guys this week, because again,
dynasty rankings, generally speaking, the timeline for me on dynasty rankings, as far as like I need to update them, like they're not necessarily something I feel like I need to update every single week, but every 2 weeks at the very minimum is when I need, like they need to be updated every single, 2 week stretch. And also the dynasty trade value chart, I'll make sure we update that after this week once our dynasty rankings are up to date as well. So if you guys are interested in all that kind of stuff, definitely leave a like and all that kind of stuff too. Danny, maybe we should do a first round mock draft, rookie mock draft.
I am so down.
We need to talk about the 2025 class. I think we haven't really talked about it too much. So maybe we should fit that in maybe on Wednesday. We could do one trade target video maybe, and then drop a mock draft, or we could do it maybe even tomorrow.
I'm sure we can find like, I know like Ian Cummings, like every few weeks is like a 7-round mock. Maybe we'll find some landing spots.
I want to see if like Kuiper or somebody a little connected has one, because I've noticed the one thing I've noticed for this class specifically is the random Joe Schmo who writes for NFLsickos.com has like 6 quarterbacks in the top 10, and I'm like, that's not happening. Like, I need to find like a industry mock of
like a PFN, a PFF, like those.
Yeah, like somebody that has a little bit more pull in the industry that knows that it's not a good quarterback class. You know what I mean?
No, I feel you on that. I mean, like I will say though, even if it's not a good quarterback class, I can see like 3 or 4 going high. Like there's a couple upside cases.
We'll definitely get you guys a rookie mock this week. Probably a first round rookie mock with landing spots. We'll do that maybe Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. We'll do it at some point this week. So definitely stay tuned for that. Yeah, I mean, Genty will be one-on-one. We're not spoiling anything for that. But yeah, going to be an interesting discussion about the quarterbacks, specifically how they fit in and what the draft capital is looking like. And some of the wide receivers having good seasons so far. You mentioned Trey Harris earlier. So stay tuned for all that, like the stream, all that good stuff. Stay tuned for tonight's stream. Peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.